Welcome to the Mind Your Own Business podcast and show. I am your host, Elizabeth Upton, and as a former executive, I have seen it all. Our conversations are aimed at inspiring new ways that you can redesign your business and your life so that you can create more time, freedom, and power than you ever thought possible. If you are a highly driven business professional, ranging from I have an idea to an emerging entrepreneur to a CEO who's ready to expand your team, or even if you are an employee who works for one, this show is definitely for you. Join us as we discuss strategies and tips and hacks that will help you to mind your own business, all while not taking ourselves too seriously. There's a little bit of all things business in here, designed to simplify and set your life up for success, from operations, marketing, sales, finance, and mindset to self-care. All of my guests have made an impact in my life, and hopefully they'll do the same for you. If you love to learn and are ready to level up, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mind Your Own Business podcast. I'm Elizabeth Upton, and I am so excited that we have not only my stepdad and someone that I love very much. He is an incredible businessman, a retired executive and entrepreneur. He was the top sales rep in medical devices and the director of U.S. sales. He was the VP of sales and marketing, multiple startup companies. He's worked in big and small, also founder of Thermascan, and sold that company to Gillette after he had opened it in 10 international markets. He's also been a consultant for 20 years in healthcare and consumer products. And I am honored to no end. Thank you, Johnny Hyle, for being here with us today, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much. I will say, first of all, that I believe I have a face for radio. So you'll have to excuse the fact that I've been down a lot of roads and not all of them were paved.
Well, I am loving that we get to interact on this level, on a business level, because usually it's around the table or celebrating all of our families and everybody getting together. And to be able to talk to you about business, I have respected and looked up to you. And I don't want to get emotional, but I'm just so honored and grateful that you're here with us to share all of the wisdom that you have. So
my pleasure.
Thank you. So let's get started on any kind of, so you have sales, you have marketing, you've sold companies, you've done small startup companies, you've managed, hundreds of people. What would you say is, where would you want to start? Would you want to start with the marketing, the sales? Where would you want to begin with giving us an overview of some of the wisdom that you've acquired over this time?
Well, first thing I wanted to say is that I love your title about mind your own business, because I've learned through all the things you just mentioned that I'm the CEO of John Hyle, Inc. And you're the CEO of Elizabeth Upton Vodka, Inc. And we're all people watching here are the CEO of your own life. And you need to think about it that way and take charge of it that way. So I really thought mind your own business was an excellent starting point. And then I thought about the question you asked, what would I tell my 30-year-old self if I could speak to him today?
Yes, I forgot to say that. I forgot to say that. I want to tell our listeners. So usually we'll go through a series of questions, but this episode in particular, Johnny Hyle and I wanted to have the theme be, what would you tell your 30-year-old self now? And so we've been thinking about this episode through the lens of that, because he has so much to share, and I wanted him to share it in a way that his 30-year-old self and your 30-year-old self would be able to take it and then apply it to today. So thank you for bringing that up, and I really, really, really want to know what you would tell your 30-year-old self.
First of all, that was a long time ago. I think 41 years now. But I do remember my 30th birthday. Interestingly, I was in New York City, and I was with a friend of mine, and I remember saying to him, I'm 30 now, I'm done being pretty. And that was an understatement. Excuse me, an understatement. But to be more serious about it, I think the number one thing I would say is to not see everything as black and white. I think that I was judgmental, even though I would have claimed I wasn't, because I thought if it wasn't right, then it must be wrong. And in fact, there are many shades of gray. And sometimes it's not about what's right and what's wrong, it's about what works. And that took me a long time to learn. So that would be something that I would try to, pass on to my 30-year-old self.
Wow. That's the quote I love. It's like, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
Right. That's a good one.
Reminds me of that. And
Right.
also not taking things so seriously or having it be so black and white. That's, yeah, I think that's something that as we grow, as we mature, we start to get that, we don't know everything, and we need to always be humble and open, and also admit when we're wrong.
Right.
And, it takes a lot. I think it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah. And it's really important. At least it was for me. I admit I was way too black and white. I'm too logic based, and sometimes there are other factors to consider, and I didn't always do that. So that would be one part. The next part I would say I would try to talk to that 30-year-old about what's the definition of success, because at that point in my life, I was too tied up in what was my title and how did I get promoted. And along with that, you made a little more money, but when you came from the field as a sales rep, you actually made more money than when you became a sales manager. So for me, it wasn't always about money, but it was about title and maybe prestige. And someone taught me along the way that success is doing what you're good at and enjoying it. And I think that's so important, to enjoy what you do. Don't just chase a title, and do something that makes you feel like your life is fulfilling and rewarding. And I can talk more about money, but the feelings you get from what you do are very important.
Yeah. I think through this pandemic that people are starting to get that more than they have, considering that one of the questions we've asked ourselves are, what is essential, and who is in our inner circle? What is important to us? How we can spend our time with our family, not going into the office.
Right.
We've slowed down a lot. And I think it's important to look at that. And also when things do open up again, and when we are going back to the office, how we can continue to have what your definition of success is in our lives all the time, having that be present with what we do, and not always chasing something or looking for something outside of ourselves, but being able to connect with each other and recognize and be present to what's important to us.
Exactly. Your husband, Adrian's a good example. He's very successful in my mind because he's so good at what he does, and he enjoys it. He gets rewarded by it, personally. So
yeah,
it's a little harder in business than it is in music or art, but it is important, and you got to think it through.
Yeah. What do you think about that personal life versus business life? How would you define it or find the balance?
That was actually one of the points I had jotted down here. Is I think that they're different, personal life and business life. And I think that when I was 30, I didn't see the difference clearly enough, and I confused the two. And I'll give you some examples. In business, a smart man taught me that if you want something to happen, you got to make it happen. And I think there's a lot of validity to that in business. You know, you got to just go for it. You got to believe in it, and you got to set goals, and you got to work at it. But in personal life, I think I tried to do the same thing sometimes, and it doesn't work. You can't just like make something happen in a relationship. You have to allow it to happen. And another smart person said to me, it's got to flow like a river. And that's the way it is among your family members, you know. But not in business, it's different because you got to kind of build a boat and charge down the river, you know. So that's how I see it anyway. That would be that would have been helpful to me when I was 30.
So not what I'm hearing is not looking at your personal life the same way that you would your business life, in that, okay, let's say I'm setting up a goal and I'm working towards achieving that goal. In personal, being, how would you put it, being a little less forced on structure, like I'm going this direction,
right.
But allowing for the things that happen because there is relationship dynamics and family and emotions, and being able to go like a river with the flow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
I have a couple other things I would tell them. You see, when I was 30, I needed a lot of help. So
don't we all? Please bring it on.
I would tell that person that you're not good at bureaucracies. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of difference between a small company and the way it operates and a large company and the way it operates. And then a startup is even a third animal. But I've worked for several small companies, and as you grow them, somebody comes along and buys the company. And then they come and change the culture and change whatever they want to change because they own it, even though you advise them not to. And then when it doesn't work, they blame you. So in my opinion, I just am too frank. I say what I think, and I don't belong in, you know, Gillette or Eli Lilly. You know, I belong in a smaller company where I can say what I think and think what I say. So I would give that person that advice. And I lived through it twice, and both times I learned the same things, that it really wasn't for me.
So when you
bureaucracy.
So you created a small company that then grew to the point where you were able to sell it to a major conglomerate, and the transition from selling it to the new way that they were going to run it, you realized in that twice that culture and that environment wasn't what lit you up.
Exactly.
And then, so did you go on then to create another small company? And then
eventually, yeah. In both cases, I stayed on a little while because there were perks, and you know, I probably made more money for a while, but maybe only a year or two, and then I moved on. In both cases, and one of them was Eli Lilly, and another one was Gillette. So they were very successful and very good at what they do, but it just wasn't for me.
If you were to put yourself when you were starting the companies, what would you say are some steps or some things that you experienced that were really important when you were starting that company?
Well, that's a long answer, but a startup company is extremely hard work, extremely difficult. And I have done a number of them where the stock options I received, you know, I could use for wallpaper because they're not of any value. And that's common. I mean, that happens, and you know, you just forgive yourself, you learn from it. You either improve the company or you try another one.
Hmm.
Um, but the first thing you need to understand is that your job is to get and keep customers. And people lose focus on that, believe it or not. They start thinking their job is to run reports and, manage inventory and lower operating costs or whatever the things are. But your job's to get and keep customers. And when you're a startup, you can really focus on that. You have to, one customer at a time. So when you're a big company, I mean, it doesn't really matter as much because you have so many customers, right?
Hmm.
But when I did Thermascan, I'd like to say a few words about that. It was the 1 second thermometer that took your temperature in your ear.
Hmm.
And when we started it, people thought I was a bit crazy. And my mother even said to me, well, son, why would anyone want the temperature of their ear? And I tried to answer her about how it was a core body temperature and all that, which I think she just rolled her eyes. And then I told her they were going to cost $100 each. And she said, well, son, why would anyone pay $100 for a thermometer? And despite that, we went on to sell millions of them. And so we actually, in 5 selling years, we got to $100 million in sales, which was quite a wild ride.
Wow.
And we sold the company to Gillette for $200 million.
Wow.
And they put it inside the Braun division, which is, the Braun shavers and the Braun
Yeah.
Oral-B toothbrush. Quite a successful company, but Braun was headquartered in Frankfurt, near Frankfurt, Germany, in Kronberg. So I had to fly to Germany, like once a month and attend all these meetings over there. And it was really, really different, really different. But it was a big success. And it wasn't for me to stay with Gillette or Braun, but I was happy with the money I made. And I have not been able to repeat that success.
That's pretty high success. Those
Yeah,
are,
that was a big one.
yeah. Yeah. Wow. Huh. And where did you get the idea of, like, have you always been interested in the medical industry
Well,
or?
when I when I graduated from college, I became a stockbroker for a short period of time.
Hmm.
And in those days, the market was quite different than it is now, and it was not doing well back in the mid '70s. So I ended up interviewing with Johnson and Johnson, and I got hired as a rep for J&J, which is a great training ground. I mean, that's really a class company. And I worked there for a couple of years and calling on hospitals in Western Pennsylvania. And then I met a guy who worked for IVAC, headquartered here in San Diego. And I found out he was making a lot more money than I was. And he was getting promoted. He recommended me, to take his territory. And I did. And so we sold IV pumps and controllers, IV tubing, and electronic thermometers, the kind that you put under your tongue or under your arm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my start in the thermometer business.
Oh.
And that company was headquartered, as I said, here in San Diego. So eventually I got promoted to regional manager, then area manager, and then director of US sales was a home office job. So that's how I got to San Diego.
Do you have any fun sales stories? Anything that you remember that was something you can share with people that work in sales today?
This is more of a thermometer story. I was going to tell you what I think is the greatest marketing story I've ever heard.
Oh, okay.
And it was about a gentleman who started a company making dog food. And sales were going along, growing a little bit each year. And suddenly they turned south. Things were going poorly. So he called together his sales and marketing people and he said, what's going on here? What can we do differently? So they gave him all these ideas and he implemented them. He put 33% more in each can. He renamed the food Mighty Meat. He changed the label to be more colorful. He got better positioning in the grocery stores. He bought end cap displays, ran ads, and the sales took off. And about a month later, they turned south again and all the way back down to where they had been. So frustrated, he calls his people back together and he says, I did everything you asked, more in the can, different name, end cap displays, blah, blah, blah. Sales were up here. He showed them a chart. Now they're down here. What's going on? And a little guy in the back of the room stood up and said, the dogs won't eat it. And so when you know that story, like my friend Pete and I, we just say dogs won't eat it when we know something really isn't going to work. Because that is the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
The line is all those other things don't matter unless the dogs will eat the dog food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that leads me to, when you think you have a good idea for a company, you have to really make sure that the dogs will eat it. You have to really make sure that it's not just a technology in search of an application, that it really solves a problem for people.
That's big.
That's huge. And sometimes I see these ideas, for 20 years, we interviewed hundreds of guys that had ideas. And sometimes you could just see that it was a cool idea, but it should be a product, not a company. So think about that. It should be a product. You have to kind of get it started, and then you're going to sell it to somebody where their distribution channels and customer service and all their support can make it really grow. But you got to ask yourself, is it really a company or is it just a product? And does it really solve a need, that people have?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds so simple, but it's such an incredible question to really, really dig into, because it's the reason behind why you're even doing it to begin with. It's the intention behind solving the problem that people need and being able to support them regardless of, an idea. It has to solve a problem. I love that. And you can ask yourself, what problem am I solving? And what is the need in the market? And how can I help people? How can I support people? And I think, again, with the pandemic now more than ever, people have had to really pivot their business because there's new problems to solve. There's new issues that people are having. There's products that people don't need. We're all in our houses, and it's also how you grow with the times and learn and pick up what's going on in the world. It's an evolution. So you could be solving one problem and then something could happen and then you have another problem to solve. And it's interesting to think of it in terms of a product versus a company. I've never thought of it like that.
Right. Or if you were the guy building the next generation horse whip for a buggy rider, and then somebody invented the automobile, suddenly you didn't need horse whips anymore and everything changed. I think we're seeing some of that now with EVs, electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. I think that the whole world is going to change to that, and General Motors and Ford and Exxon Mobil, all the the big energy companies are going to have a lot of changes to make.
Yeah.
Problems to solve.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that with marketing and sales and all the experience you have, it's been a trip to see how things have changed with social media and with the internet and with now Absolutely. People are doing videos and selling things on videos. I did an interview with a good friend who is a marketing expert, and she was talking about how 2021 it's going to be more about the videos and talking to people rather than it being an ad, which is where we're headed. I mean, it must be such an interesting thing for you to see the changes that have happened just as a result of the technology over time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I was just on the end of, when I was beginning to retire, doing Google searches and understanding, how you rated on Google, was just coming into vogue. So I'm certainly not an expert in those areas, but that is the present and the future.
Mm-hmm.
No question about it. And I agree with what you said about videos. The idea of mass marketing is gone.
Yeah.
It's individualized marketing now. And our computers all know if we visited a site about bicycles, suddenly things start turning up either by email or as an ad on the side of a website trying to sell you a bicycle because they know that you showed interest in it. That's all very different than 30 years ago.
I laugh because Adrian, my husband, I ended up on the on his phone. I purchased some clothing, and then ever since then, he keeps getting all these ads for women's clothing, and he's going, "Why are these things just coming up on my phone?" And I said, "Oh, I used your phone to order those." And
exactly.
It's kind of it's crazy how you search for one thing and then they all start showing up. I should make sure I don't buy any bras or anything. They're going to start popping up on his phone. It's so funny.
I would say one more thing about the small company, large company differences for all of your listeners is really think through what you're trying to accomplish with your life financially. And there's a book I recommend called The Millionaire Next Door. And I'll find the name of the author here in a minute. But the book, let me see, what's the guy's name here? The book talks about that the average millionaire really isn't somebody driving a Rolls Royce. It's somebody that didn't spend lavishly on luxury items, maxed their 401ks, saved money, and did the same thing, for 35, 45 years. And I have a neighbor like that. He spent 35 years at a major aerospace company. And I can tell by his boat and his cars and stuff that he has, a lot of cash. And he had a full pension plan, which America doesn't really see much anymore. But back 30 years ago or 40 years ago, you could join a company and that pension plan would take care of you, when you retired, versus a 401k, which is good, but not as good. And if you do startup companies, you're not likely even going to have that. And so if you get lucky like I did and you sell a company, you have to save that and look at that as your retirement. They say luck is where preparation meets opportunity, but you got to be prepared, but you do need some real luck, like I had with Thermascan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also what I'm hearing is being aware of what you're spending your money on. And,
right.
Adrian and we were just having a conversation. We have saved so much money not going out. We have saved so much money that we would have otherwise spent at a restaurant.
Right.
I've found out how to, buy in bulk and have things stretch and also not compromise on the way that we like to eat and the way that we like to live, but do it in as smart and a saving way that we've never done before. And part of that is experience. Part of that is what's going on in the world right now.
Right.
But gosh, I was saying to him, I wish that we had done this 10 years ago. We would have more savings and we would have saved all of that money, that even if it's buying a coffee every day, that's $5 a day that you're spending on a coffee, that multiply that. I mean, that's money that had you invested or put into a mutual fund or anything that could appreciate over time.
Right.
And we were talking about that too. I finally feel like I'm having that conversation, whereas before I thought, oh no, I won't be able to do that. And being able to save even just a little bit of money and putting it away and putting it away, putting it away, it can really set you up for your retirement. Because as you said, a lot of us don't have 401ks. A lot of us,
Right.
don't have pension funds, and especially those of us that have started our own companies, and we don't have medical covered, and everything is really expensive.
It really is.
And I feel like it wasn't as expensive, or at least it seemed easier when I was a kid. It seemed like my parents, it seemed like everybody, even though they weren't, rich, everything was still taken care of. And I
Right.
feel like now it's harder and harder to do that. A lot of my friends are wondering about having more children because of the cost and it's, I feel like we have a different set of parameters now that didn't exist back then. And we're having to get creative and resourceful and not have everything that we want.
I agree. Absolutely.
And that's okay.
Here's another thought for you. Your generation is really the first one that doesn't have a clear-cut path to earn more money than your parents did. I mean, when I was young, I knew I could make more money than my parents did. I'm sure my father could make more money than his father did.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's become very difficult to do that for a couple of reasons, some of which we've already touched on. But, these are times to save money. And I have a saying that you should pay yourself first. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a job with a paycheck and your company offers a 401k, but you think you can't afford to be part of it because you need everything in your paycheck. That's wrong thinking. You got to do what you did and not go to Starbucks every day,
Mm-hmm.
and put $50 a month or whatever the number is into that 401k and let it grow tax deferred. Sometimes companies will even match it for you. But if you wait until you feel like you have enough money, you'll be waiting a long time. So you pay yourself first, and you'll be happy you did, 10 years from now. The other saying I love is, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So, you didn't plant it then, so go plant it today.
Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
Right.
Yeah. Right. Like now.
Right now.
What do you think that the most important aspect of any business is?
We've already touched on that. I think it's getting and keeping customers.
Okay.
And if
Got
you
it.
always stay with that in your mind, it solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Now, a company has to make profit, right? Or it will die.
Yeah.
So you have to have correct pricing. I think a lot of companies don't think about their pricing properly. But if you have the right pricing and you deliver a value that the customer benefits from,
Mm-hmm.
they'll come back and they'll send others and they'll buy more. And the dogs will eat it. So.
What advice do you have around leadership? And, obviously running a company, multiple companies, and the success that you've had, you have had to have been a leader.
Yes.
What could you share with us on that subject?
Well, I used to try to teach my new managers that there were three things they should focus on as they led their teams. And the first one was to tell them that we can do this. Okay, our quota for 2021 is 3,000 units. That sounds like a lot, but I believe we can do it. And the second thing after that is, our cause is good. We're selling a medical product. In the case I was in, we're helping people. Our product works better than the competition. We have a fair price. So what we're doing is good, and you'll make money for your family. And then the third thing is, I care about you. So I'm going to be here backing you up. I'll be here to help you any way that that you might need help. Just communicate with me and let me know, what you need, and I'll be there for you. So we can do this. Our cause is good, and I care about you. Pretty much get you loyal employees, in my view.
Wow. And you've utilized that, shared that
Yes.
with all of your teams that you've worked with over time.
And when I had, like a manager under me that was his first time hiring, recruiting, I'd try to get him to focus on those three things.
Mm. And what do you do when you make a mistake? Like what have, in terms of leadership and in terms of running teams, what have you done throughout your career?
Well, I made a lot of them. So I guess, you have to admit you made a mistake. If you try to cover it up, and you're certainly not going to lie about it. But you have to forgive yourself, then try to learn from it and move on. I had an aunt who you met one time. She said to me, that's why they put erasers on pencils. And I think that's a clever way to think about it, right? People make mistakes. You erase it and redo it. Don't lie about it. Forgive yourself and move on. I think that's probably good advice for personal life as well, don't you?
Yeah. Take responsibility. And I like that you say to forgive yourself. I think that we forget that step a lot. I think we can be really hard on ourselves and not take the time to give ourselves some space and say, you know what, it's okay. You're human. You're not perfect. And when you're up to big things, you're going to have mistakes, and, and also learn from them. And failure is really important. Actually, failure helps us to learn from our mistakes. And
there's a story about an elderly statesman, like businessman, who had done a lot of great things in life. And they asked him, what if you could do it all over, what would you do differently? And he said, I'd make more mistakes, because that meant I was trying things.
There you go.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. What's one of your greatest failures that you've ever had?
Oh, I don't know if this is really a failure, but I think it cost me money. That when I did my last startup company, it was called lifechart.com. It was up in Mountain View. And I came back to San Diego, and I ended up starting in the consulting business with my partner, who and I don't think that was the right thing for me. I think I should have found another startup company and, swung for the fences again. Because I made money, but, I didn't make millions like I could have if I'd have gotten lucky. So that's really what comes to my mind. Certainly I made mistakes with people at times. I would say, for everybody listening, if you have to fire somebody, be kind about it, but make it happen. We never fired anybody too soon. And, sometimes you just let it drag out because you feel badly. But at the end, you always go, damn, I should have done that 3 months ago. So I've made those kind of mistakes for sure.
Yeah. It's tough to fire somebody. And it's true. If it's not a good fit, regardless, it's important to have everybody on the same page, because you're probably doing them a big favor.
Absolutely.
They're going to go find some place that's going to, be in alignment with what they want, because you don't want people to be there that are 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door.
Right.
It's hard. I've been in the room and had to fire multiple people in different companies, and boy, it's really hard, but
it's hard.
But if you know in your heart that you're doing something that in the long run could help them, whether they know it or not in that moment, that's what's always given me the courage to be really clear and succinct and, call it a day.
And I'm sure you told them that they could find something that would fit their needs better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, what other thoughts How do you manage your time? Have you, as a leader at running successful companies, do you have any tips for us on time management that you've used throughout
I
the
do.
years?
In fact, um, one year at our national sales meeting, and we'd have, a couple hundred people in the audience, I gave an entire talk about time management.
Oh,
So I thought it was that important.
there you go.
And I remember starting it off with, time is the bottom line of bottom lines. So if you think about that,
Wow.
time is the only thing that you can't get more of. I can get more people to work for me. I can get more money if I have to borrow it or earn it. I can get more ideas. I can get more products. I can buy a bigger house. I can get more cars. You can't get more time.
Nope.
And if you waste your time, you waste your life. So I used to use the analogy that there's 1,440 minutes in a day. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't.
So think about if somebody put $1,440 into your checking account every day at 1 minute past midnight, and you could spend it all, but you couldn't carry it over.
Ooh.
So if you didn't spend it, it was gone. And that's the way time is.
Wow.
If you waste it, you're never going to get it back. And I think that's, young people don't see that as easily because, you think you're going to live forever and, you're immortal. But as you get older, you realize, time is precious. Time is a very precious thing that you should. One saying I had was, be cordial with people, but be ruthless with your time.
Mm.
And really don't waste it. Don't waste other people's time. Don't waste your own. I mean, sometimes you get stuck in traffic or whatever, but having a plan, if you failed to plan, you're planning to fail. So make a plan and include dates in there, right?
Yes.
Like this will be done by December 10th. This will be done by January 10th or whatever. And then really work to live up to that. Otherwise things float.
So important to have measurable results. So
Right.
important to say by this time, by
Exactly.
when this will happen.
Right.
It's a game changer when you do
It
that. Even if you're just kind of throwing it at the wall and saying by this date, even at least by doing that, you're already a step ahead because you have it in time, you have it planned, and then it's something that you're working towards.
Right.
I don't think anything big or goal oriented that you're doing will get done unless you have a buy win or a date that's measurable.
Yep. That's very good thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm a huge believer in time management.
Mm-hmm.
I probably drive my wife crazy sometimes with it.
My mama.
Yeah.
She's a good stickler. She's always on time. She's pretty good about that.
She's good about it.
Yeah. Well, what would you want to share with our listeners? What would you want them to do after learning from you, listening? What do you want their takeaway to be?
I think if you work for a company, work for it. Really, really embrace what your company needs from you. If it's your own company, embrace what you need to give and take from your employees, and have, each year be vital and full of growth. Not if you work for a company for 20 years, you don't want to have 1 year experience 20 times. You want to have 20 years of which there was real growth for you and your company and your people.
Say that again. That was a cool one. Say it. What was that?
If you work for a company for 20 years, right? You don't want to have 1 year experience 20 times.
That's cool.
Yeah. You want to have 20 years that were different because times changed, you changed, you grew, you got smarter, you hired more help, whatever, just keep on trying to be vital.
Mm.
Yeah.
And empowered. Sounds like a lot of the theme that you've been sharing with us today is about being empowered in your choices, believing in yourself, going for it, and really, you know, there's an impeccability in the time management and in being a leader and really playing all out. Play all out. I know that you have done that your whole life, and I know
I
that
tried to.
you're successful because of it, and you
And,
have all of us, you have your family, you have everything that I think a lot of people would really want. And
yeah, I'm a lucky man.
yeah, yeah. And we love you, and
Thank
being
you.
empowered to make your decisions. I just is the theme I'm hearing here.
And along with that, think about success. You want to have a success strategy, not a survival strategy. And startup companies are famous for just figuring out how they're going to get through the next year
Mm,
when they can raise some more money and really get serious. So it's a challenge, but success is never final and failure is rarely fatal. That's another one you can think about. But
gosh, love that. Say
you
that
know,
again.
success is never final and failure is rarely fatal.
I love that.
And I used to tell my son, Jay, that the trouble with being successful is that you got to keep on being successful. It's not like a one-time thing, right? You're going to win a race and you're successful for the rest of your life. There is
Right.
no finish line, like the old Nike ad.
Yeah.
When you when you get on the right track and you're doing well, you got to keep on doing well.
Yeah.
So
There's
and
unlimited levels.
that's right. So I know I
Yeah.
have a lot of sayings, and but that's kind of my way of communicating.
Well, you just get me thinking about everything. You always do. I mean, I love hearing. We'll put together all of these quotes that you shared with us today and share them out in the world, because each one of them you could talk about and
Right.
think about. And how do you even keep them all in your head? I mean, it's always amazing to me how you have these, like, you just can recall and pull them up, and while you're working, oh, this one, that one. It's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. I have them on my notes on my phone so I can recall them, but you got them right here.
Well, I have some notes as well, but anyway.
Well, thank you for being here and sharing with us and all the wisdom that you have. And I hope that our listeners really get the empowered words that you shared with us today and apply that in their
Yeah.
lives, in their companies, with their loved ones, with their employees, and really take it to heart, because everything you've shared with us is a really important aspect of business and life.
Right. It's things that work for me, so they can work for you.
Yeah.
My grandmother taught me always have your oar in the water.
Mm.
And I love that. I always thought of her for that reason. And she certainly had no education, but she always worked hard. And she took pride in that. That she, what she had, she did for herself. So
I love that. I love that.
and I would recommend to anyone watching that they hire you to help them,
Oh, well,
because I
thank you.
think you're good at boiling things down to, what do we do on Monday? That's what people can lose easily. It's got to come down to, what do we do on Monday? And you're good at that. So you'll be
Thank you.
successful, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I love you, and I appreciate everything that you shared with us and have shared with me in my life. And I just thank you for everything.
You're welcome, honey. I hope to see you soon.
Yes, hopefully soon. And for everybody that's listening, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And this is Elizabeth Upton signing off and reminding you to mind your own business. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you got a lot out of what we talked about today. If you are watching from YouTube, then please give the video a big thumbs up if you did. Make sure to hit subscribe down below if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. If you are listening from Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts, because we know that there's a lot, please take a minute to subscribe if you haven't and give us a review. It helps others to find the show and it puts wind in our sails, literally. So please do that. We are at MYOB Podcast on Instagram, and I am at Elizabeth Upton Coaching on Instagram. If you are interested in following along there, we offer a lot of bonus material. And there is a link to the show notes down below in the description box, along with the resources we discussed in today's episode. Most of all, thank you for honoring yourself. Thank you for investing your time with us today. No one is going to be more of a champion for your growth than you are. So always remember that. Keep showing up. And this is Elizabeth Upton signing off and reminding you to always mind your own business.